Awesome. Well, thank you all for coming. Really looking forward to the discussion today. Phenomenal panel once again. Webinar number 6 of the Building an Enterprise Level System with Xero series, presented by CFO Tech Stack. If you haven't checked out CFO Tech Stack yet, be sure to do so. My name is Jack Teal. I am the APAC commercial lead at Mayday. We're on a mission to mend month end for larger Xero businesses, beginning with the needs of those who are multi-entity. We're dealing with intercompany recharges, cross-entity bank recs, keeping intercompany loans in balance, all the things that you need as a multi-entity business on Xero. As a little background, I started my career as an accountant with PwC about 10 years ago, where I completed my chartered. I then moved into an advisory firm, worked as an accountant and advisor to SMBs, and have spent the last 5 years working in a variety of different startup roles in the Xero ecosystem. I'm really passionate about Xero. I'm really bullish as to where it's going moving forward and the strength of the Xero platform for larger businesses. It's been a really interesting journey to see businesses grow up on Xero over the last 10, 15 years, from small sole traders to mega multinational, multi-entity, complex businesses where Xero is still providing a great foundation for their accounting. What's clear though is the lack of relevant content for those of you who are here today. For in-house finance leaders who are in these businesses, these larger Xero businesses, there's not enough relevant content addressing the challenges that you're facing. So really thrilled to be here to dive deeper into that. Thanks to CFO Tech Stack. So yeah, really glad to be here, and thanks to our awesome panel. I'll throw to each of you now to introduce yourself. If I can go to you, Anita, first. That'd be great to hear your intro.
Hi, I'm Anita. I'm a principal at Aretex. We specialize in bookkeeping and data management services. Most of our clients have multiple entities, so we look after a lot of these sort of complex payroll issues that we're going to be talking about today. And I've been a Xero partner since 2009, so I've been on the journey for quite a while, and still energized and still loving to find workarounds for complex situations. Well,
awesome.
That's it.
Thanks, Anita. Over to you, Liam.
Hey, I'm Liam. I'm one of the co-founders of Project Alfred. We run an outsourced finance firm in Adelaide. We're currently running payroll for around 25 businesses across both Xero and Employment Hero, and yeah, been using Xero for a while, like the marketplace, and yeah, good to be here.
Thanks again for joining us 2 days in a row. So a lot of good effort there from you, Liam. And Lachlan, over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Jack. Firstly, very excited to be here today. I've actually had a very similar journey to that of Jack. I spent the first 5 years of my career as an accountant at one of the mid-tiers in Sydney, and then was very fortunate to be actually able to go and work at Xero for the following 5 years. So back in 2017, I kicked off there and spent the last year and a bit working at Employment Hero. So working with accounting and bookkeeping partners to help them migrate to Employment Hero HR and Payroll, and very much on this topic. So when they have more complex needs for HR and Payroll, how can we help them with their migration or their issues? So very excited to be here, Jack.
Awesome. Yeah, great panel. All of you have amazing experience with respect to implementing, using, running payroll, being on the Xero ecosystem side of things too. So I think it should be a really good conversation. In terms of setting the scene just a little bit more, as I mentioned earlier, at Mayday, we're currently built for larger Xero businesses. And something we hear speaking to our customers a lot is that they have a couple of key questions on their mind. One is Xero still the right system for me? And two, how long is that going to remain the case? So these are questions that we want to answer with this series and sessions like this, because we know the ERP move is quote unquote horrible and hectic from one of our own clients. And it's incredibly expensive. And that's before 58% of ERP implementations fail. So we understand that ERPs are there and they're needed for certain businesses. It's just maybe about righting the misconception today and throughout this series that you need to go to an ERP before you actually need to go. Xero can grow with you into your, I suppose, larger, more complex need phase, which many of you might be in. And just as a bit of a highlight, I suppose, too, or a point to highlight, is that this isn't product marketing. This isn't a product demo. This is very much a conversation. That's the reason I'm not wearing a Mayday t-shirt today. And yeah, we just want to add as much value to this conversation, this topic, as we possibly can around how you can go further with Xero and its ecosystem. So in terms of the agenda for today, we want to delve firstly, as we have with all of our sessions, into what Xero does really well. So what is Xero's payroll system capable of? What are the advantages of it? Then we want to talk to the challenges that you're going to begin to experience, potentially some of the pain points you're going to begin to feel as you grow up, as your team gets larger, as you have some more complex payroll requirements. How can you then leverage the Xero ecosystem so that you don't need to make that ERP move, that you can solve those challenges? And then we'll discuss when an ERP might actually be the right solution. We don't want to overcorrect as part of this series and pretend that Xero is going to be for everybody. We know the ERP world still exists and there's a target market that's relevant for that. But yeah, we hope to kind of provide some clarity around where that line might be. We'll then share any final top tips and advice for you. And we've got some time at the end for Q&A too. So I'm going to throw to you first, Liam, to kick the conversation off around what Xero does well in its payroll system.
Yeah, so I think I mean we have a bunch of clients still on Xero Payroll, and it does a very good job of like kind of simple salaried employees as your business is starting. That kind of if you're growing, that kind of 10 to 20 range. If you're kind of there's no intention to grow, then sitting around even 30 to 50 is completely fine in terms of a time aspect. And it gets it gets super right, it gets PYG right, it gets all the basics right. And so it is a good option when you're starting out.
Anita, did you have anything else that you would add to that around what Xero's payroll system is good for as you're getting started?
I think, I mean, it depends on the business industry type, but if you do have a lot of salaried and part-time employees that aren't on awards and have, set days they work, set, annual leave simple, then, it can manage higher numbers. But I do think just for basic payroll understanding for business owners, if they you could have a bookkeeper processing the payroll, but I think business owners have come to understand payroll a lot better over the last years, or the move to Xero, because before payroll is sort of like in other products, it's sort of hidden, or they won't actually go in and have a look. So I think it brings the data up front and does provide a lot of resources for people who don't have a clue. So that's what I see it has done well. It's simplified a complex system.
And I'd be interested to get your thoughts, Lachlan. And I might be hopefully not throwing you under the bus. I know you work for Employment Hero, and so obviously you'd want to sell Employment Hero to anyone that you can. But at the same time, I imagine even internally, you've still got a point where you'd say, actually, for you at this stage, Xero Payroll is still going to be absolutely fine. So it'd be interesting to know what you see as that part of the journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right on the money. We speak with a lot of businesses that even have less than 10 employees. And yes, they're still a great fit for Employment Hero, but we just say, hey, you know what? Xero is going to work perfect for you. It has, as Anita and Liam alluded to, it does everything really basic. You can just be a business owner. You don't have to necessarily be a payroll person to do payroll. It has Xero Me app. It's got GPS tracking for travel, expense reimbursements. It does everything that you need it to if you've got a basic payroll. And there just may not be a real need to jump across to something like Employment Hero for the time being.
Yeah, cool. So, I mean, we've discussed there what Xero does well and where it might fit in as, a solution for a lot of businesses. Liam, where have you seen potentially within your own client base the needs develop a little bit further, or the pain begin to kind of come to light around Xero Payroll not quite being the solution anymore?
Yeah, I think the first thing is probably awards. Anyone on an award, like, it just doesn't deal with it. I mean, you could create it, sure, but I've seen that and it's a mess. So that first, and then I think if you're getting lots of people quickly and growing quickly, the onboarding of new employees is quite manual. There are some things coming out in the market that help with that, but it's still not the seamless aspect that a fully fledged payroll thing is. That they're probably like the two key kind of things that we see around that. I think timesheets and rostering, depending on the industry, if they're hospital or something like that, that's another area that I'd probably not use Xero for.
Yep. Anita, within your client base, have you seen anything in particular that stands out as being a trigger point for needing to look beyond Xero as the ultimate payroll HR solution?
I think, I mean, and this isn't even about multiple entities, it's just for individual entities. As a business grows, you want to have different types of payroll admin access or view-only access. Sometimes with leave approvals, it's confusing for employees putting in leave because they get everybody's who has payroll admin access to approve their leave. They don't even know who the people are. It could be, you know, so I think the ability to, you know, have proper user-defined roles, as well as adding in locations or, you know, when they're rostered, making sure that wages and expense and super accounts are going to the correct area in the P&L. I mean, Xero can be quite set up quite complex, you know, with the pay items mapped to correct wage, expense accounts and super accounts, but I find it's a lot easier to manage in other products that are specifically for payroll, by just, you know, applying a location and then all the correct expense accounts are mapped. But yeah, definitely it's usually the awards. It's usually segregation of duties that's a trigger, as well as you know, forgetting employees' birth dates or anniversaries or those sort of important milestones and dates you want to keep track of, because employees do get offended if you forget, obviously. But I mean, yeah, and I think just keeping it all together, even the ability to submit expenses through or, you know, novated leases, salary sacrifices, it's a bit easier to set up in other products.
Yeah, I
that's
think
great.
one thing you noted there as well, like the tracking aspect, you can set up in Xero, then as soon as you want to have one employee going to two different tracking categories, then it falls down. Whereas others don't.
Oh, on the main point that I usually get is the ability to not have any document management within it. So when you update any details, you put notes in the notes area, but you can't actually attach or apply a date from when it's effective from. So you do go looking around for where the information is, or the pay rise, or the change to you know, hours or rates. So yeah, I mean, luckily Xero does have the audit trail, but I do find it's a bit more extensive in other products.
Yeah, I mean, Lachlan, to the points Anita and Liam have made, sounds like I'm sure that's a lot of the reason why you end up having conversations with people around Employment Hero. But are there any other areas that you kind of see come up a lot that trigger people to be speaking to you?
Yeah, sure. So I might split this question into two, because I think Anita and Liam have done a really great job at talking to the payroll aspect. And I guess just one final thing, you know, Xero does have an employee limit, so that's 200. And once you do hit that 200 limit, you do only get, I think it's 2 or 3 months before Xero doesn't really support you any further. So if you are thinking about growing, don't wait till you hit that 200 mark. You know, if you're at that 150 or below, whatever it may be, look elsewhere. But if we look at the HR side, right, you know, Anita just pointed out some features or workflows that Xero does offer, but it isn't a fully fledged HRIS solution, right? Like, it's fine for doing the small businesses, but you're missing out on all the things that a fully fledged HRIS can do. So we're talking recruitment, onboarding, managing certifications, ongoing learning and certification, employee performance management. So there's this whole other aspect of things that Xero can't really handle, and probably a big reason why we do speak to so many businesses that are on Xero, because they're saying to us, hey, Xero's fine, it does an amazing job at general ledger, and it may be fine for their current payroll needs, but as we grow, you know, onboarding's taking us a long time, or we're really struggling to recruit, or, you know, if we work in a highly regulated industry, we don't have a way to manage our employee certifications or licenses. So there's a whole other, I guess, aspect to that where Xero is limited, purely just because it doesn't tend to do that kind of activity.
I mean, the certifications are really important, especially in the trades businesses, even if they're not on an award. And driver's license details, taking in, you know, KYC, identity checks, Vivo checks. That's the one reason why I always used to recommend Employment Hero or a product that has Vivo checks, making sure that everybody can actually work if they're from overseas, as well as the register functions where you can say this employee's been onboarded with this laptop and this phone and this car and this fuel card. So I find that's really handy.
And we got a question in the chat. I think Lachlan's answering it right now, which was, what do you recommend for clients who want to track, who want more than 2 tracking categories for wages? I think it was the limit was 1 in Xero, was it?
Yeah, in Xero you can assign an employee a tracking category, I believe. Is that right? And
Yep.
You can't assign them like as in one tracking category option. So like there's 2, obviously you can have 2 different tracking category things in Xero, but then if you wanted to have, say, different divisions and there was like, I don't know, head office and sales and someone was 50-50, you can't do that in Xero from my understanding. Is that right, Anita?
Well, even when I've been able to achieve it with the tracking categories, I've found there's just random stuff that goes missing every time a new super is added. And so a lot of the time I've actually used, instead of using the tracking categories, I would have the tracking category there for that employee, but I would actually use additional chart of accounts expense and to manage it. So you can clearly see.
So
sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so it's probably no surprise what I'm going to recommend here for Lisa. So Employment Hero, that's what we're designed to do. So you can have what we call locations or even dimensions or multiple locations where you can assign staff to different areas of the business, multiple areas of the businesses, different wage accounts or wage expense accounts, should I say. So there's multiple ways that we can deal with this within our solution.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to say that. I wasn't going to suggest it until you did.
Yeah. I think the answer was pretty clear cut where I was going to take that one.
Also, with adding in your own EBAs or creating your own guides.
Cool. I mean, I'm thinking it's time we might move on, and we've kind of already started to have the conversation around point 3 there on the agenda, which is how can the Xero ecosystem help? I mean, obviously, this is the strength of Xero as a platform, is that it does things really, really well as a starting point. And as an accounting ledger, it basically lasts as long as you need it to. But there are those elements like payroll, where, or HR, which it doesn't necessarily solve for, that you're going to be looking for a solution for. So in terms of the Xero ecosystem, I mean, Employment Hero, we've obviously heard from you a little bit about that, Lachlan and Anita and Liam as well. But I mean, just generally speaking, what have you seen achieved? You work with a lot of different clients. Lachlan, you have a lot of different customers on here. So what are we talking about? How far can people go? What have they been able to achieve with Xero as the foundation, leveraging an add-on, or whether it's Employment Hero or if there are others?
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously going to probably put a bit of a bias spin and talk about Employment Hero here, but I might preface this by saying I believe I know for a fact there's tens of thousands of businesses that are utilizing our integration between Employment Hero and Xero, whether it's in New Zealand, Australia, Southeast Asia, or the UK. So thousands or tens of thousands of businesses are really pushing the limits with what they can do, right? Because as you said, the general ledger in Xero is amazing. Like that's their bread and butter and they do it amazingly well. But then they can leverage our solution to have over 50 modern awards built into their solution, or be able to operate multiple ABNs, because that's something that you can do out of Employment Hero Payroll as well. If you do want to manage the entire employment lifecycle all the way from recruitment to offboarding, that's something you can do by leveraging the solution as well. I think basically where I see it playing is by leveraging a Xero and Employment Hero, you've got the full back office solution, right? You have everything that you need for HR, payroll, general ledger. I personally don't there are obviously other add-ons dependent upon other needs, if you need inventory or, things that are kind of outside of this conversation. But, there's tens of thousands of businesses that are using EH and Xero as that full back office solution and basically not ever hitting any limits. We support businesses that have in excess of thousands of employees on Employment Hero. Xero, you may only decide to move to an ERP, which we're going to talk about later on, if you may hit some kind of transaction limit or you may have some specialist inventory requirements. But until that point, there isn't really any other, reason why you would need to move to another solution. But that's just my thoughts. I'd be keen to hear from Anita and or Liam on this.
I mean, in particular, Anita and Liam, I'm keen to hear what you've seen. Like literally like speak to a client situation that you've had, or, you know, a really big business that's managed to make this work?
Yeah, we had or previously had one that they were at about 170 employees and about 50 million turnover. And then they acquired another business which had about 80 employees. So instantly they then went over the threshold. And then Xero they give you, I think it's 3 months we were given, and then it was like at the end of that 3 months, hard cut off, you will not be able to use this anymore. And so we then moved them over to the payroll side of Employment Hero, and I believe it's still there, Lachlan, but correct me if I'm wrong, the integration around a migration of bringing all the employee details over, so that process was as smooth as it could be. There was obviously a bit of junk in the Xero file, in the pay items and stuff that they had not cleaned up. So some of that came across, but when we cleaned that up, they were all good from there, and then they were kind of off and running. And one of the funny things was, like, I flew over to Sydney to help kind of on day one of running the first payroll, and when they saw just the leave calendar, like that very simple thing, and they were like, "Oh, this is amazing. We can get our managers to like make sure people's leaves are all right." And solely the leave approval was almost what like blew their mind more than, you know, there's a lot of other features, but just that like really simple thing that there's a very I guess there's a lack of visibility in Xero on those kind of things.
I've noticed, you know, sometimes just you know, just doing a transfer from, or, you know, I frequently get asked to work on projects to do an implementation of something, or a conversion from a product to another. But one of the most common things I usually see when you're moving to a product like Employment Hero is, yes, they've got the awards right, but, you know, they forgot all about the allowances, and all of a sudden you've got all these 1 million laundry allowances and meal allowance breaks, and then everyone's complaining, why do I have to pay so much? Or, oh, they worked through their shift. So all these little things come up, and the client will spend quite a lot of time just revalidating employment contracts, award rates. A lot of that comes to light. So a lot of times when we do implementations of new payroll systems, we actually do it from scratch. And then we go, we've just run this pay run and this is the variances here with the rates, allowances, etc. I mean, the good thing with using a product like Employment Hero is it also will notify you if someone's birthday, you know, has come. These are for the younger employees, and, you know, they're due an increase. But like, I've worked on a lot of different projects, so using Xero as the foundation for the general ledger, you could have Employment Hero for HR, but perhaps they would be using the Hero Pay version for payroll, but they're actually using other roster systems for whatever reason, because, you know, on site they prefer, you know, deputy or tender because of the way it's set up. So you can actually bolt on different apps to get what you need. And I mean, I've managed, well, one of the examples is medical centers. There was about 80 at that time, 80 separate Xero files managed. And we had external reconciliations outside of the file, but using GAcon, actually, just making sure that everything at the end of month was accounted for, and consolidated reporting either through Power BI and GAcon, just depending on what information we were looking at. But we currently, Aretex currently does look after quite a big pharmacy group, and we've got about 100 separate Xero files for that group. And point of sale is kept externally. So, and payroll, you know, we get the journals in. So there is, but, you know, most businesses prefer to use Xero. It's easier. They're running their business and they don't want to have to learn another system, especially when the next step up, the mid-market, it seems like people go from Xero to Dynamics. There's a big gap.
Yeah, I mean, we've got this a little bit over the course of the various sessions from people around. I mean, there's obviously the misconception we're trying to clear up with the conversation here around you can go further with Xero as your platform, but also I think there's a misconception that life's going to be better on the ERP. Like, people think that it's we're only not doing it because the cost and the time to do it. But there's also a lot of good reasons you might want to be considering around ease of use and bringing the team up to speed and the experience they're going to have on a day-to-day basis. To your point, Anita. And sorry, you're up. Go for it.
I was just going to say, but with any change, but even with the change with introducing any of these apps, it's you've got to put in a lot of training, as well as when there's a change of a team member or on site at the practice level or pharmacy or store or business. There's always got to be training, continual checks on your balance sheets, making sure that things are actually going in there, because some businesses just don't connect it. They wonder why they've got no cash flow, but they've got no payroll expense.
So I mean, taking where we've kind of got to now around the size and scale that you can get to, I think the implementation conversation there around getting the people on board and how easy it has been from your side, Liam, to bring data across as well is a key element. So we've kind of solved the initial pain. We've leveraged the ecosystem. We've got solution to our problems. If we get kind of moving into that bigger end of town and we start to have that ERP discussion now, we are trying to right the misconception and trying to make it clear that you can go further on Xero, but we also understand that there will be a point in time for some businesses where it is time. It's time that Xero is no longer going to be a ledger. You need to go to an ERP. And all of the different topics that we're discussing as part of this series are touching on different elements of that. So it is a bigger discussion. Obviously, it's not just around HR and payroll that's going to be the primary driving factor for you. But I mean, Lachlan, it'd be interesting to get your take. I mean, is there as Xero has a hard limit at 200, does Employment Hero have a limit where people are going to have to say, well, I'm BHP now, I've got 25,000 staff around the country or something? How do you see it?
Yeah, I'd love to say BHP, wherever on this call, I'd love to say, come have a chat to us. But no, I think the important thing here is we don't necessarily have hard limits. I mean, there are limits to our product where we wouldn't recommend it if they do have 25,000 employees, but we do also have businesses that have a couple thousand employees using our solution. But I think the exciting thing is as well, we also integrate with a lot of the ERP solutions out there. I mean, where we sit in the market is, in between, or, if you outgrow Xero, come to us. If you outgrow Xero, you may go to a Business Central or a Sage Intacct or an Oracle NetSuite, and we want to make that change as easy as possible. So we also integrate with that. So, you don't want to have to change everything because you do move to an ERP. You may want to keep some kind of familiar products, and that could be an Employment Hero. But I guess when we speak to a lot of businesses, when they do come to us about HR and payroll, and we ask them, why are you looking? And they say, we outgrow Xero. We kind of ask them, what are some of those, key driving factors? And, we've touched on them, but commonly they may have multiple ABNs, or they've hit the transaction limit, or they may be in a certain industry like manufacturing or distribution where Xero just doesn't really handle that, and they do need some kind of specialist software there. So I would say those are mostly the common things there. But I guess I'll just finish this up by saying, you don't need to change everything. You may just need to swap that general ledger, and you can keep Employment Hero for HRIS and payroll if you are moving up market to a mid-market or enterprise accounting solution.
And I've also found a lot of businesses don't actually know the full capabilities of Xero as a product or integrations that are available. To simplify their issues. Sometimes the issues actually just are ABA uploads, which I mean, like with Employment Hero, you can pay payroll through Patreon. But that could be their pain point in the payroll process is, yes, we can get it done, but we just can't get it. And people are complaining it's late, but it's not actually because of the processing team or the product or the software. It's because somebody takes their time and doesn't like using ABA files.
Yeah.
So it's always understanding the problem, document it all, as well as always ask the product you're working with, what are the workarounds? Can it be done before you move?
I mean, Xero and its ecosystem as well as anyone, Anita, and you've obviously worked with some relatively big clients on making it work. Have you had any scenarios where you've seen a client get to a certain point and they had outgrown it, they needed to go somewhere else? What were the driving factors?
It was actually more to do with reporting. and it was more to do, so it was also a big medical center group, and I worked with them from when they had about 8 clinics till I still do random projects every now and then for them, but they've got over 120, and their actual finance team didn't want to move, and actually onboarding new clinics was a lot easier, but they did move to Dynamics in the end, was just because of pure volume, and Xero's actually slowing down with reports. And even though each of the clinics had, maybe 20 employees, but when they were actually running reports, because of the quite extensive chart of account listing and the volume of transactions going in, as well as the inter-entity transactions, it just didn't make sense anymore. But I mean, that was pushed to its limits. So we had run reports and they would just, spin for like on one file, but we had automatic extraction. We had connected it to Geocon as well as Power BI, but in the end, the move to Dynamics just it made sense because not only from an accounting point of view, it was also Dynamics became their CRM. They had their own custom HR product for as well as their different dependencies for onboarding candidates and storing doctors and nurses certifications. So there was more for, and then within Dynamics, obviously they were using Office products, so it was just easier for everybody to be on the same system at that time.
It sounds like they got quite the way along the line before they had to, though, which is good to hear. Yeah, very interesting.
To be honest, they pushed every limit I had seen. So it was a massive learning curve for me because I kept thinking it might be the internet. Maybe something's wrong with the Xero file. It was just struggling. So
well, and I think that's where, even Xero, we had a session with them on optimizing Xero for scale and speaking about not every integration is equal. Different integrations are going to put more or less load into your Xero file, which is important to be aware of. And that, at some point there is a limit. It's not necessarily a hard limit; it's a soft limit. You'll probably feel it more than you'll know it from those loading times. But really interesting kind of challenge you would have been dealing with there.
One of the main, two of the main issues that they were having is contacts just being created on the fly, and trying to lock down vendor and customer accounts for, just because people can just create it from a bank rec. So they needed to do that for fraud, to prevent fraud, as well as chart of accounts just being created randomly too. So whenever you would do your consolidated reporting, you would just be constantly just spending time maintaining all these accounts because someone's just decided to create a new account. So if those privileges could be refined within Xero, I think more people would stay.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, good points. They hadn't come up before. So I might park the ERP conversation there, move on to point 5 of the agenda. And just a reminder, if anyone's got any questions from today, I imagine you're here because you're potentially dealing with some of this more complex HR and payroll stuff within your own business. So now's the time. Feel free to throw us questions. We'll jump to the Q&A in a second if there are any there. But yeah, I just wanted, I suppose, a top tip or a piece of advice from each of you, if you can share it, just around this topic, or maybe a key takeaway from something that somebody else has said. Liam, if I can go to you first.
Yeah, sure. I think my top tip would be that if you are planning on growing, even if you're starting off small, is move earlier than later, because it'll just make that process a lot smoother. And even, at 20 employees kind of thing, if you think if you have intentions to be larger and get up to the hundreds or thousands, then don't wait until you're at 200, as Lachlan said earlier.
Yep. Awesome. Lachlan?
Yeah, great. I think the biggest one for me is we hear this statement all the time. Payroll takes one person in the business 8 hours on a Wednesday, their entire day to do. If this sounds like your business, there are solutions out there that will help you. We've got award interpretation that will not only make sure that you're compliant, which is probably number one, but will also drastically reduce the amount of time, also time sheeting, rostering. So just to repeat, if you do find that payroll is taking way too long, there are solutions out there that can scale with you and make the process a lot more simple and easy. And most importantly, make sure that you get it right.
Yeah, that's huge. Anita, last point.
Same thing. I think document your business well with processes, all your requirements. If you require awards, what sort of documentation you require. I mean, using an HR product obviously saves so much time. You don't have to think about finding a template, you know, for a change of pay increase, or it just saves so much more time, and you learn a lot from the system. So I mean, I'm a continual learner, but definitely top tip would, for your clients, if you do work with across a lot of clients, document their requirements, document any of their pain points, have the discussion, and if there's change of employees, you know, have another catch up and make sure that everybody's on the same page regularly.
Awesome. I think from my side, the thing that's kind of stood out is there's a number of key reasons or pain points you're going to run into even early in your journey with Xero Payroll if you've got complex needs. But then there's the HR component that Xero doesn't really cover off on, which is, you know, how Employment Hero and there's other solutions out there that do a lot more than it's more than just payroll. And you know, when you've got a team, when you've got staff, when you're trying to build a culture and you're trying to get people engaged and performing and doing better, that kind of, you know, often sits alongside the payroll solution, but Xero doesn't necessarily touch in that space. So really appreciate the chat today, guys. There was an interesting question there, Liam. I think you've already answered it, but I don't know if anyone else saw it, but the question was, does anyone know any plans around Xero releasing its own version of an ERP? I mean, my perspective on that would be that I've never heard anything about it, and that they probably, as far as I'm aware, would be very focused on just taking their SME solution to more markets at this stage, rather than worrying too much about, you know, trying to tackle a completely different account.
Especially when they are like actually a profitable business now. It's not like they're in startup mode or anything. It wouldn't make much sense to do that.
I think
they can cannibalize their own market.
And I think as well, right? Like if you Google Xero, the first thing it says is small business accounting software. And I think, you know, Xero has built this ecosystem of 1,200 apps, I think it is now, or around that. So you don't need to really have an ERP when you've got all these other solutions that can plug in and you're away, plug it and you're away.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the thing, is we think an ERP is a one-stop shop and it's all going to work super smoothly, but there's a huge amount of installation, implementation, consulting costs to get it to work for you. That's also involved in building the perfect Xero app stack for you. It just might be, you know, might save you an arm and a leg, and means you don't have to move and change your entire system as well. So anyway, guys, great to chat. No other questions in the Q&A, are there? Yep, no other questions. So thanks for your time. Thanks to everybody who came along. Very quickly, I just want to touch on our series wrap event. So the first few sessions, I hadn't actually chucked this slide up, but I wanted to. If anyone's in Sydney, feel free to pull your phone out, scan that, because we actually have an in-person event happening at Xero's HQ to wrap up the series, which will be awesome. So it'd be great to see you there. So yeah, I'll give you just a little bit of time if you are wanting to. Tickets are free. There'll be some drinks and nibbles provided, but really it's just an opportunity to catch up with other in-house finance leaders who are dealing with these same challenges. I'll be there. There's a few other people representing the different apps that have been speaking, and we'll also have someone from Xero there to talk as well. So it should be just a good opportunity to catch up. Beyond that, we have a few awesome sessions coming up. So Monday next week, we've got enhancing multi-entity consolidations, which I know is a massive challenge for a lot of multi-entity Xero businesses. So jump on that one. Navigating and optimizing for FX, which if you are dealing in multiple currencies will be a no-brainer to come to. And then leveling up management reporting. So in the same realm of the consolidation reporting space, but it's just such a big topic. We've got a couple of different sessions on it. So definitely come along to those. If you haven't registered, apacenterprise.cfotechstack.com is where you can do that. So yeah, look forward to seeing you all for some of the upcoming sessions. Thanks, Liam, Lachlan, and Anita. Really appreciate your time. Great conversation today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Cool.
Have a good day.
No worries.
See you guys.
Bye.